Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Conference Talk Show. My name is Tom Singer, and I am joined by my co-host, Eliz Green. And guess what? This is our 99th episode. Eliz, can you believe we've been doing this for a year and a half and plus, and we started out twice a week. Now we do it once a week, but we've almost done 100 episodes of the Conference Talk Show.
It doesn't seem possible, but it also seems like I've been talking to you on Monday mornings forever, and I don't mean that in a bad way. But I think for me, and I think you would agree, this has been a lifeline of when everything happened 18 months ago or so, and we watched our calendars disappear, and a lot of people in the meeting industry all of a sudden had to just cope with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of loss, really. This, getting to talk to you about the meetings industry once a week, sometimes twice a week, sometimes we did it every day for a while there, it really has helped. And hopefully it's helped other people. We certainly have talked to an amazing array of guests about different things around the meetings industry. But we're getting to the end of 2021, which is hard to fathom. We're almost at our 100th episode. Tim, do you have any predictions about what 2022, which is just around the corner, might hold?
Well, I think there's a lot of predictions out there for the meetings industry, and we've certainly talked to some great thought leaders over the past, 18 or 20 months while we've been hosting this show. But one of the things that I see, I've heard it from people that we've interviewed here on this program, is that the role of the master of ceremonies in meetings is changing. Now, I've worked for a decade as an MC, and for so many years, it was an afterthought. There wasn't a budget. They liked the idea, or they tried it once and it didn't really fly. But when we moved to the virtual situation, I think a lot of meeting professionals realized that the role of the MC could make their event better and make their life of running the event a lot better. And so two things happened. One is people paid more attention to it. They're working it into the budget. And then the other thing is a whole bunch of speakers and other people are jumping on the bandwagon and saying, hey, I too am a master of ceremonies. So my prediction is that 2022 is the year of the MC.
Ooh, I like that prediction. And we've waited a long time for, particularly when it comes to hybrid events, for the year of the MC to come. Almost a decade we've been doing this conference talk show style MC duo team format, and it didn't seem like people really understood what we were doing.
I think it was 8.5 years ago that we first hosted the hybrid side of a big meeting, and you and I went on to do that for 7 or 8 different organizations, and people always loved the idea of having this talk show style format as the way they broadcast to the at-home audience. The problem is nobody took it seriously. They didn't see the at-home audience as really valuable, so they didn't want to really pay us to be doing it. But now I think that has actually bled over to the in-person meetings world too. I think there's just a lot of reasons why now we are ripe to put on better events. And you and I have come up with some reasons behind this, but another reason that we haven't really touched on in the tips that we're going to have along this episode. One of the other things that has really come up around why the MC is so important is people have to up their game for in-person conferences, hybrid conferences, or virtual conferences because of what we've learned over the last 2 years. The bar is higher, and an MC brings that area of professionalism.
Right. And so we did come up with 5 ways an MC can elevate your event, whether it's in person, virtual, or hybrid. 5 reasons to use an MC. Tom, what's our first way?
Well, I think the first reason why you want to have a dedicated professional master of ceremonies is you have a person on the team whose whole focus is your audience / audiences if you have a
Right.
hybrid event. And that's a really interesting thought is so often like an association will just have their board president be
Mm-hmm.
the MC of their conference, or a company, if they're doing a users conference or a customer conference, they'll have their head of sales be the MC because he or she, they have a great personality. So they'll put them up
Right.
on stage. The problem is during that event, that person has other responsibilities to the organization, not just to the audience. So they're often pulled in a lot of different directions. Where when you have somebody who is dedicated to make sure that that audience is having a better experience, all of a sudden it transforms everything and the audience feels it. The vibe of this person or people, if they're a team of MCs, are dedicated to my experience. And I think it makes the event better.
I agree with you, but let's pick at that thing that you just said, or a team, because when you gave the tip, you said audience or audiences. That is something that so many organizations are looking at right now, that they're going to do a hybrid event. And how do you make sure everybody is paid attention to? Because it's not as good. It's not going to be acceptable just to point a camera at what's happening on stage in your in-person ballroom and say, well, okay, that's the broadcast. I mean, it may work. Let's be honest, if what you're doing is a continuing education program and you're just broadcasting, maybe that'll work. But if you're hoping to really engage those virtual audience members, it's going to take a little bit more. What do you think, or why do you think it's so important to have a team to do that?
Well, you and I discovered this when we were doing this whole idea is that the in-person master of ceremonies has other
Mm-hmm.
responsibilities than just introducing the speaker and telling everybody where the bathrooms are. That
Right.
in-person master of ceremonies is really the host of your conference. Even if they don't
Mm-hmm.
work for your company full time, if it's a professional master of ceremonies like you or I, we are the face of that conference to everybody who's live in person in that ballroom. And so what
Mm-hmm.
happens is you have coffee breaks, the MC needs to be at the coffee break. You have a
Right.
luncheon, the MC needs to be at the luncheon. You wouldn't invite
Mm-hmm.
somebody to a dinner party at your house, and I've been to dinner parties at your house. You wouldn't invite somebody in and then excuse yourself and go to your bedroom and take a nap while everybody's in your
Yeah.
home. The host has to be present. So therefore, when you have a hybrid event, it's those coffee breaks and the lunch hour that often are the time that you're going to do content just for the at-home audience.
Mm-hmm.
That MC needs to be somewhere else. So having the team means that you have the audience at home has their own dedicated sort of host of the show.
Right. And that virtual audience MC can be the voice of the virtual audience in
Oh, so
that
true.
in-person place. And you just did this where you had sort of like a flip of what we just talked about. You were the in-person host for a virtual presenter, correct? And and
Yeah, I
really
recently
thinking
did it.
about how are you going to do that?
The presenter at this day or this half day event was coming in via what do you call it? Zoom. He was coming in
Mm-hmm.
remotely because he lives in Panama, and so he couldn't
Mm-hmm.
make the trip to be there, and so he was being broadcast on the big screen. But his program was super interactive. There were like things that people in the room would be doing, and so he needed somebody to be the eyes and ears in the live room to
Right.
be able to make sure that the exercises were done properly and to bring people back from break and toss it back to him. And it actually worked out great.
So it's really thinking about how do we pay attention to both of those audiences, or even, when we talked to Patty Hendrickson, she was talking about having those, I forget what she calls them, but the remote groups that are participating. You need to pay attention to all of those audiences. So that definitely is a way an MC or a team of MCs can elevate your event.
And anytime that we try to save money at the expense of our audience, we hurt the
Mm-hmm.
experience of the conference. So that's why I think this is also important. So Eliz, what's our second reason that we came up with
Well,
on why it's the year of the MC?
of course, being who I am, I have to talk about stress a little bit. And you know, what is wonderful is that several groups actually, of meeting professionals participated in my research on job stress. And I can tell you for sure, those people were some of the most stressed people in my study, which should not be a surprise to anyone in the industry. It really should not. One of the reasons to work with a professional master of ceremonies or a team is that it takes some of that load, some of that stress off the meeting professional. And, I joke, but it's true. If we're going to measure my success as a MC, I really look at how well did my meeting professional do at that event. Did he or she get to have a sandwich? Did he or she get some sleep overnight? Did they actually get to enjoy part of the whole event? I mean, I think one of our most favorite comments after an event is, I just let go and enjoyed my event. Cool. That means that we did our job. And that is the metric by which I measure. We want the audience to feel good too. Not, we're not forgetting about them, but ultimately we are paying attention to the audience and serving our meeting professionals. And one of the ways we do that is just to be an extra set of eyes and ears all of the time, because we know what it's like. Our meeting professionals are running around at 90 miles an hour, putting out fires all day long. Like, what do you mean the coffee's not going to be here in time? What do you mean? All day long. If we can be that, like, oh, hey, by the way, this isn't working. Do you want me to do an announcement? Or, like, just having that eyeballs out all of the time, or earballs out, listening to what the chatter is. So helpful and reducing that stress.
And I think this is one of the reasons, because of the year plus that we spent doing virtual, I think this is why so many meeting professionals went, oh, I now understand why we want an MC. I think it was learned during the virtual, because one thing I always say is that if I'm emceeing an in-person live event, when I introduce the speaker, if I say, now, one of the leading experts in the country on stress, please welcome Liz Green, and the audience goes wild, and you go out to give a keynote for an hour, I pretty much know, if it's a professional speaker, that I pretty much have an hour of downtime that I can check my emails, I can prepare for the next little bit that I have to do on stage, etc. But doing it virtually means that I have to constantly be watching, because if the internet goes down in Milwaukee, and I'm in Texas, and the audience is all over the world, and only Milwaukee has a problem, you're going to vanish. And here's the interesting thing. In the hundreds of things I've emceed in person, never once has a speaker vanished. But in about the 50 or so things that I've done virtually, I've had the speaker disappear because of a connection problem or had their audio go out. I've had it happen like 5 or 6 times. And so that's when the MC comes in. But I think the meeting planner suddenly realized that they themselves have to constantly be paying attention. And so if you have that extra eyes and ears of an MC, they can be there to do stuff so that stress level can go way down. And it's not just true for virtual, it's true for all the formats.
It is. And it's even more true when you're in a hybrid event, because you indeed, if you're doing it by yourself, you don't get to check your emails because you're paying attention to the chat.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Which is one of the reasons it's better to have a team, because it's very hard to be paying attention to 2 full audiences at the same time, because it may be going great in the in-person event, but over here in virtual land, they're not hearing the speaker. I've had to say, you need to actually use the microphone because the people at home can't hear you. It just helps to have that all of the time. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Tip number 3, Tom.
The third reason that I think you want to have a professional MC, and this one falls to a lot of my area of expertise, is the Master of Ceremonies brings professional level engagement to your audiences, be it an online audience, a virtual pod that's meeting to watch a hybrid event, or your people who are live in your ballroom. And
Right.
the reality is that so often you see non-professional MCs who will start off by going, meet your neighbor. And then that's the only thing they do for the entire 3-day conference to have any type of encouragement around engagement. And we know that
Right.
conferences are better when people feel they're engaged, they're heard, they're sharing best practices. And so a master of ceremonies who knows how to do this and knows what these techniques are about, a master of ceremonies will get people just subtly, not through hokey networking games or anything, but
Right.
they'll get the people to learn how to lean in and to feel they're part of it. And when that happens, that's what drives people to come back the next year. When audience participation is high and people feel like, wow, I contributed to this event. I was part of it. People saw me and heard me. They sign up to come back next year. So that's one of the reasons that a professional MC is so important.
Well, it's especially effective when you're encouraging them to connect with each other, but also connect with the content that's been delivered and digest it, so that it's not just this fire hose that's coming of content. Because a lot of our conferences is just like, well, here's all the information, blah, constantly. You need that time to digest it a little bit. Otherwise, it's just like you. I heard a good phrase the other day, is that you can only learn what you can sit.
Hmm.
Like, if you're sitting in a room for 4 hours and information's just coming at you and you don't have that time to digest it a little bit, put it into context for yourself, talk to somebody about what does this actually mean, it doesn't stick. It's just like a barrage. So
And
connecting
that's
to
where
each other, connecting the content. Yeah.
that's where this idea of content weaving comes in. That's so
Mm-hmm.
important. Is a great MC is looking for themes that weren't even necessarily planned, that comes up between speaker number one, speaker number two,
Right.
conversations at lunch, things that happened in the breakout session, things that were heard on the bus on the way to the museum for the cocktail party. A great MC is listening for content and ideas everywhere, and then bringing them back and sharing them with the audience. And I know that's something that you and I both do when we MC, is we try
Mm-hmm.
to look for those nuggets that the speaker might have had as a throwaway line, but that you can weave back in later. And the audience always is like, oh, I
Mm.
did hear that. And again, when they connect with something that maybe they missed, it causes them to lean in more. And when they lean in more, they're more engaged. And it just is it's a big circle. That's why it's a skill to be an MC. And that's why
Oh,
having a professional matters.
well, absolutely. And that leads a little bit to tip number 4, which is you can leverage your professional MC to find speakers, to find vendors, to find production companies or producers, to have a little bit of insight of what is unique about this platform and what can we do with it. And they're all constantly changing and trying to improve, which it's a full-time job to keep track of what you can do on the different platforms. But being able to have somebody that's been immersed in all of this and say, oh, you know who I saw that is going to be a great fit for you, or somebody will say, hey, at the end of the day, we need a cool thing that our virtual audience can all do together, but like we've done everything and it's like we're tired of it. I think off the top of our heads, I bet we both could name 4 people who could provide something that would be really neat, and they
Yep.
probably are not even the same 4. So
Right. And it's both that idea of who's the right speaker or the right entertainment, or even things like just what's the right activity.
yeah,
I'll go to 50 events a year, 40 plus where I'm the speaker, and 6 or 7 that I might attend as an audience participant. So I'm seeing 50 events a year. Most people who go to events go to a handful of events a year, and
right,
even many planners, they only plan a couple of major events, and maybe they go to ASAE or PCMA, but they
right.
aren't seeing 50 different events a year. And so it's the eyes and ears of someone who is that active in the meetings business to be able to tell you, hey, here's a new way that you could do an exercise to start your event. Here's a new opening idea, or someone you could hire that could come in and do this session. And all of a sudden, everybody feels like, wow, we got free consulting from our MC.
Right. Oh, I am so glad that you said free consulting. So glad, because I'm about to pull up my soapbox and step up when I say that I firmly believe that as a professional MC, as a professional speaker, if I am going to refer a speaker, a producer, a production company, or whatever it is to someone, it is because I truly believe that that is the perfect fit for that event, for that organization. And I will never, ever, ever take a kickback, a referral fee, a commission, because that's not the relationship I think we should be in. We should be a conduit. We should be a consultant. We are serving our meeting professional and that event and that organization, not lining our pockets. So I will now step off my soapbox.
Well, it is so true. There are people who everything they refer, they have some sort of a percentage kickback or an affiliate link or things like that. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Is that really a true referral, or is that a way to get a little commission? And so I think I do the same thing when I refer a speaker. If they try to pay me a commission, my answer back is, no, I referred you because I think you're great. The best commission you could give me is refer me to somebody else. And I think that's a much better way. And it serves that meeting planner better when that's the way you're doing business. So cheers to your soapbox.
All right, good. I'm glad we're in agreement about that. All right, that was 4. What's number 5, Tom?
Well, number 5, I think we've touched on it a little already, but in the moment, a professional master of ceremonies can go with the flow and step in and do whatever needs to happen. You and I, about a year ago, were co-MCs for an organization, and they were going to do like morning yoga meditation workout. And the person who was supposed to come in and do it was having technical problems and couldn't get in. And there was 20 minutes that needed to be filled. And yet that person could have come in at any moment. So you and I were texting back and forth. And as soon as we came back from break, we let everybody know what was going on. We said, we're going to get to it as soon as we can. And then you and I dove into meaningful content, interviewing each other. I think we talked about stress, and I interviewed you about your research program that was totally on topic and helpful to everyone in the audience. And about 10 minutes in, all of a sudden, the person who was supposed to be there was there. We wrapped it up very seamlessly and brought in that session. And the audience had no idea it wasn't planned that way necessarily, but the meeting planner did. And so having an experienced master of ceremony who has their own content means that they can jump in and do whatever they need to do to keep your conference flowing, which goes back to it reduces stress on the meeting planner.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I guess we sort of said this, but that backup, whether you're virtual or in person, the backup of having an MC that has content of their own, is like a little safety blanket, because you know that whether it's needing to fill 10 minutes or needing to fill an hour-long keynote. Now, would that increase our stress level? Yes.
Maybe a little.
Like just a little bit. There might be this moment of like, okay, yeah, sure, let's go. But we can do that. And it just is that security blanket. My favorite like step in and handle it moment came at Influence 2021 this year in Las Vegas, where I think this will sound like a familiar scenario. It doesn't happen very often though. We were running early. We were about 10 minutes early. The problem was there was a meal, sort of like a fancy past hors d'oeuvre thing happening at the end of that session. And the food was not ready yet.
Let the audience out, right?
No, because you know that that's going to be a disaster if people go out there expecting to go to the bar and get some nibbles. The bar and the nibbles have to be ready. So our meeting professional was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do for 10 minutes? Okay, that is never a problem. We can fill 10 minutes. It's a question of what are we going to do? And I think we've talked about it before. One of the MCs for the event was Omikango Dibinga, and he did, with no notice, a fabulous impromptu rap based on what people put into the chat, which,
Yes.
like, if you can bring that kind of backup, that's pretty cool.
So my favorite experience in my now almost 13 years as a professional speaker and MC, my favorite experience happened a couple of years ago. It was pre-pandemic. I was the MC for about a 5,000 person conference that I had MC'd 3 previous years. It was my 4th year as the MC. So I knew the audience really well. And they had planned early on in their planning this really special closing ceremony that then, just like you were talking about, fed into a casino night and food. And things had changed along the way, and they had canceled the big thing that was planned, but they'd never filled the space, and somehow the meeting team missed it. And so the day of, with like an hour before, they were talking to the caterer and the casino night people, and they said, hey, we're just going to do a little like 20-minute close and let people out 40 minutes earlier than we had intended. And the caterer and the casino company said, no, you're not. Like, we aren't ready. There'll be no dealers. The pizza won't be here. It's being cooked off site and being brought in. You're supposed to start at 5 o'clock. We won't be ready until 4:59. And the meeting planner kind of freaked out. My text started blowing up. She's like, could you do something? And I gave her a couple of ideas. She picked one. I ran back to my hotel room, and I literally was like 2 blocks away. It was a convention center event. My hotel was 2 blocks away. Pulled up my computer, rearranged a PowerPoint to something I thought would work and that they had approved, put it on a stick, came back, literally gave it to the AV team, not knowing if they were ever going to be able to pull that PowerPoint up. And I went on stage 5 minutes later, and I delivered a 45-minute closing keynote that the audience just assumed was always part of the schedule. And the only people who knew were the 2 people in the meetings department and the chair of the association. Were the only people who ever knew this had come down. And that meeting planner and I, we'd always been good friends, but to this day, and it's been several years, she will laugh about the fact that you saved my ass, and that's why I'll never have an event without a professional MC. So It does, being able to go in the fly is that whole bow of why a professional MC trumps having Becky from accounting do it.
Right. You know, we pick on Becky a lot. You know, Becky seems like a very nice person, but she's probably not a professional MC.
I'm sure she's a great accountant, but without knowing better, we probably shouldn't give her the keys to the whole conference.
Right. Well, and that, I like that. That is actually really important. Choosing the right MC, and this is not one of our tips, but we're going to dig into that for a second. Choosing the right MC is really important. And no one should be insulted by you asking, how many of these have you done? Who can I talk to? What can I watch? To make sure that you're not handing the keys over to somebody who doesn't have the skills in order to do it. And that is, I think, something, we haven't talked about this, but I'm going to make this offer. If there's anybody out there in, Zoom world and YouTube world and Facebook Live world that doesn't know some professional MCs, like, contact us. I'll put up the thing. Here we go. Contact us at the conferencetalkshow.com and just ask us, because absolutely we would love for you to hire me or Tom or me, but also we know some other just fabulous MCs, and again, happy to consult and give you some free referrals about who might be a great fit for your audience.
And Eliz and I are never upset if we're not the right fit. Sometimes people want to have a musician, or they want to have a magician or a juggler or somebody who's going to be providing that type of entertainment while they're the MC. I work with one group who rotates. Every other year, they'll have a performer MC, and then they'll have sort of a high energy business impact MC. And they've used me several times for that. But on the off year, they use someone like Jeff Savilico or John Petz to fill in that role. And, that totally makes sense. I'm never offended when somebody says, no, this year we want someone who can eat fire on stage, because our theme is fired up. And it's like, awesome. I'm not eating fire. Yeah, no, we're not eating fire.
Nope. So please, take us up on the offer. So few do, but take us up on the offer, conferencetalkshow.com. And Tom, we're gonna make an announcement about what episode 100 is going to be. We're going to do that soon. But you can catch us live on Facebook most Mondays at 11, conferencetalkshow.live. Catch all the episodes on YouTube at conferencetalkshow.watch. And Tom, tell them about this award thing that you came up with. Such a good idea.
So a few months back, we came up with the Conference Hero Award because we've had the opportunity to interview so many great people in the meetings business who have really made an impact, from meeting planners to hoteliers to consultants to speakers, just across the board, that we realize that, it's often a business where we don't get those attaboys and the pat on the backs. And so we created the Conference Hero Award for people that we know went above and beyond the call of duty in the last couple of years to serve the industry. And of course, we can't know everybody, so we're open to you nominating. You can go to conferenceheroaward.com and you could nominate someone who you think is truly a conference hero, and we'll honor them.
Absolutely. So please take us up on our offer. Please nominate somebody who has gone above and beyond, and join us for the next episode of the Conference Talk Show. Yes.
Episode number 100.
Hard to believe. Thanks everybody for joining us. Have a good rest of your week. See you soon.